we have accomplished much of these topics. For this cycle, the Commission is proposing priorities based on approaches: assessing progress using indicators, prevention, and adaptive management. As part of our coordinating functions, we are also proposing activities based on the development of tools and capacity building for Great Lakes research. We will be looking for your comments on these topics, as well as suggestions for other projects, approaches, or priorities. But first, I will turn it over to my colleague, Commissioner Glantz, to talk us through the proposals that we have from our boards and from our own Commission thinking. So, Darren.
Thank you.
You need these?
No, I'm good. You good? Yeah. So good morning, everybody. All of the workshops, the way the workshops were structured that you participated in, obviously, are drawn right from these priorities. So setting these priorities for the 2 years is critical. That guides the collective work binationally of our boards that advise the IJC, our staff, and it provides that focus. And we need your input to make sure that we're on the right track. So 2 years from now, when you're looking at what workshops you're going to be attending at the biannual, you will know that your input was the reason why we did this. So let's kind of walk through this a little bit. And hopefully you all saw this piece of paper. This is our 2-page flyer that gives you the overview of what we're proposing with the draft priorities. And on the back, you actually get into a little bit of the details. And these are specific approaches that we want to take for these critical issues. And so the first one is indicators to assess progress. Hopefully many of you have seen the draft report that the IJC has come out with that looked at 14 indicators. We want to make sure that there's a core set of indicators to assess long-term health of the Great Lakes that we agree on binationally and that everybody's working on the same goals. So as budgets contract or get larger, we're still able to have those core, that research that's being done. We're able to have the long-term data that makes sense of this very complex, fragile, and critical ecosystem to all of us. So priority one, with the core indicators, could be addressed by developing and applying methods to attribute observed changes in the Great Lakes, developing and publicly reporting on a set of core indicators, and including some historical data and addressing the condition of the near shore and focused on, and of course, including a focus of human health. Prevention. Prevention is so critical, as we all know. We know that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, if that's even fair anymore. It's so expensive to deal with the problems once they're here. We have the warning signs. We know what are likely to be the biggest issues. We can act sooner, and we need to be focused on one of the most effective things that we can be doing on prevention. So talking about reducing the possible pathways or vectors for the introduction of new aquatic invasive species into the Great Lakes, pathways for the introduction of various pollutants, or as we spoke about in our contaminants of emerging concern or chemicals of emerging concern, we need to start thinking about these as contaminants. They aren't only chemicals, they're biological compounds. There's other issues with new products that are on the shelf, down the drain almost every day. Oh, and I need Nick to sit down. Another critical issue with prevention is this high impact, low probability events. So we have aging infrastructure. We've talked about this with our sewage systems, our drinking water systems built in the 19th century. We also have nuclear power plants, coal-fired generating plants that dot our shorelines. The Great Lakes region is an energy powerhouse for our two nations, and we really need to make sure that if there's issues that occur, that we are prepared for what are not likely, but if the low probability that they would occur, but if they occurred, it would have a significant impact. The third priority proposal is adaptive management, and this is modernizing the approach of having more of a living plan in the way that we look at managing these incredible resources. It's a formal process for continuing improving policy and practices to ensure objectives are reached. And I'm sure we hear this all the time, that monitoring costs money. Our governments don't have a lot of money, but if we don't have the solid information to make smart management decisions, then we're just going to be wasting the precious resources that we have. So we want to be making the right decisions, and you need the right information in order to be as responsive to these resources and to manage them to be as resilient as possible. So under this proposal would include climate change, our nearshore framework, valuing the natural systems, and managing Lake Erie and eutrophication. Now, priority proposal 4 is maximizing capacity of our Great Lakes research and monitoring and facilitating good quality coordinated science. We have the Council of Great Lakes Research Managers, we have many other universities, we have incredible institutions throughout the basin, and we want to make sure that we understand the capacity, that we're using our resources as much as possible, that we're sharing information, we aren't duplicating, but rather complementing all of the work that's being done throughout the basin. Really looking at the laboratory capacity, review of our science of pathogens, looking at the vessel status report, and improving our Great Lakes research inventory. Now, you all have been incredibly patient listening to a lot of folks talking to you over the last couple of days, and we really want to hear from you. I was impressed by the quality and caliber of the comments that you brought forward during the town hall, and we really need to hear your comments on the direction that the IJC is proposing to you that we want to take, that we're looking to take for the priority session for the next 2 years. Did we get it right? Are there other things that we need to be looking at? Are there some other keen focuses that are more pressing? So the rest of this time is for you and for us to hear from you. We're going to have comments limited to 3 minutes, just out of respect for everybody. We've got one more session. We have our microphone right there, so just come on up. Don't be shy, stand up there, and we look forward to hearing from you. So thank you very, very much. There we go.
First one at bat. Au premier.
Oh, please don't be shy. I know you are not a shy crowd, and I'll call on you if I don't see you. Come on.
You better start moving. Yes, sir.
Good morning, and please state your name and your affiliation if you have one.
Sure, and I'll break the ice. Eric Boyson, I'm with the Ministry of Natural Resources, but I'm on the Water Quality Board. So first of all, I think I've been working on these priorities with the Water Quality Board, so I'm very familiar with them. The one question I have, and it's something that we should consider, is part of the report back on the current cycle. We've got a lot of outstanding recommendations from the 5 existing priorities, so somehow we have to figure out what to do with those outstanding components, and I know we're talking about the next cycle, but we can't forget that we've got some work to do to mop up on some of the existing priorities, so that's just a comment. On the 4 that's in front of us, on the adaptive management one, we've heard a lot over the last 3 days about green infrastructure and the need for working with nature and having, different processes. We can't just engineer absolutely everything and, put water through pumps and filters. So really picking up on the 3rd bullet point, which is about studying the ecological and economic value of natural wetlands. I think we should expand that a little bit because there's a lot of other green infrastructure out there, wetlands, water courses, the soil percolation opportunities, you name it. There's a lot of work that has to be done in that field. So this one is going to be a critical one for us. And I think it links back to the green goo priority from the last time, because I think we've done a lot of tile draining in our farm fields, and that's just getting the phosphorus-laden water as quickly as possible to Lake Erie without stopping it. And it's no surprise to me that we've got eutrophication problems in Lake Erie. It's the same problem happening in Lake Winnipeg, as you will know from a commission perspective. And there's a lot of work that can be done on green infrastructure and us really providing advice to governments on what that means in a Great Lakes system.
Good
Thank
point.
you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Good to see you again.
Good to see you here. John Jackson with Great Lakes United. And one of the things that I think needs to be added as a priority, or at least how you're going to do it and figure out the mechanisms, is the priority that I heard the Commission state that they had in terms of doing an assessment of the adequacy of the government programs to take care of things.
Right.
And you know, we totally and 100% support that, but it's not that easily done. And therefore, I think that a priority over these next 2 years needs to be able to figure out what's the best way to do that. What are the criteria you use in doing that? And who's going to do it? The Water Quality Board, they seem to be the body to do it. The question, of course, is, and none of us knows what the Water Quality Board structure may look like in the new agreement, but there have been some indications that they're thinking of expanding. The governments are thinking of recommending expansion of the membership. Perhaps that's the body that could do it if it was a bit more multi-stakeholder mechanism.
Right.
And if so, then I would see that as a priority that you should be giving to that board if it becomes structured properly, not if it's not structured properly, to be able to do. Because I think for the people around the basin, that's just a super high need, is to have that assessment of the adequacy of the government programs
Absolutely.
to address the problems.
Good point.
And even if the governments don't change the wording of the agreement around the Water Quality Board, legally, in the current definition of the Water Quality Agreement, you're not prevented from appointing non-government people to it. And at the moment, you actually have a couple. You have someone from the cities, you have someone who used to be with Conservation Authority. So you're not prevented from doing it. So regardless, if the governments fail to make that clearer, you still, I think, can go ahead and turn that into more of a multi-stakeholder group that is not dominated by the governments.
Right. Good point.
Thank you, John.
We'll see when the water quality agreement comes out, if they have actually done that. Thank you.
All right, would
Yes,
you like
sir.
to come up?
We're all ears. On vous écoute.
That's wonderful. Mel Messer, I'm a retired engineer with a passion for Lake Superior and a one-note focus on toxin. Didn't hear much about toxin throughout the conference. It's the chemical that makes Lake Superior lake trout the most toxic fish in North America. Toxaphene is a chemical that makes Lake Superior lake trout the most toxic fish in North America, and it's ignored. Ignoring it has allowed it to be dropped from fish consumption advisories, and for no research or action to take part on. As an old bugger, I'd like to give you some history. We made, so let's start with DDT. We found out it was no good, we banned it in 82. 72. Toxaphene replaced it. We banned it in 82. Other things like Chlordane, Myrex, on and on, replaced them until we banned a dirty dozen by the end of the 80s. What most people tend to forget is that in 1960s, we participated in a great technological transfer of agricultural technology to Asia called the Green Revolution. The revolutionized agriculture. It saved hundreds of millions of people from starvation. And guess what? It involved pesticides, irrigation, seeds, and fertilizers. The pesticides were the pesticides that we were using in the 1960s. They have not been banned. The Stockholm Convention has focused on DDT and dioxins. Hundreds of, or tens of thousands of tons are spread on agricultural fields. That's 100% emission. These emissions that are coming into the Great Lakes from long-range transport aren't coming from smokestacks. They're coming from people feeding themselves on the other side of the planet. This has been greatly realized in the international community with the long-range transport work from the United Nations. These chemicals that we used in North America for a decade apiece or so have now been used for nearly a half a century in the rest of the world. The world is equilibrated with these toxins. I'm afraid we did a strong disservice by focusing so strongly on the ecosystem of the Great Lakes, because it almost put up a barrier that said that everything that takes place within the Great Lakes takes place within the Great Lakes. And now, the international experts are finding, and I made 2 trips to the Arctic and spent a decade figuring out the simple things. But the pollution is prevalent. We continue being surprised. Remember when we were surprised that PCBs were in Siskiyou Lake on Isle Royal? Soren Jensen was surprised when DDT, where he was looking for DDT in pike in northern Sweden, and he found PCBs. That led to the banning of PCBs. We're now surprised just a couple years ago that our high mountain lakes in western Canada and the US have these toxics in them. Well, they're the same thing that's in the Great Lakes. And as Al Gore said, there are regional, there are local, and there are global wars. And we aren't going to solve in this region a global war by acting locally. I've been coming to IJC meetings since 1993. I've made this point for the last few years. I haven't felt it's been heard too loud, and I am absolutely thrilled this year to see a vibrant group of commissioners, a wonderful staff, and hopefully we can focus on this major problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Frank. I'm associated with the War of 1812 Legacy Council, and I think it's important that as far as the historical perspective, that we embed or include some artistic and creative public engagement in the process. And as far as a little more public relations outreach, I was a little surprised to see that Al Gore's address wasn't on the front page of the USA Today, and you know that was an incredible presentation. As far as the the scale and the scope, and that what I would like to propose is a need for some sort of a binational higher education consortium as far as a team building project that would include all the colleges and universities in the Great Lakes, okay, and so that they take possession or ownership of their watersheds, okay, and as far as how it's going to go back to the K through 12, as far as involving the schools, the local schools, and that you have an opportunity here for a pilot project that I've been working on now for some 10 years. And I went to the last biennial meeting over in Windsor on the other side over there. And that I think there's an opportunity to, I shouldn't say turn it into a fun thing, but to create a competitive thing. And I was really impressed with the Detroit River, the walkway, as far as what they've done. And I think that the model needs to be politically pushed, like Al suggested, but and that the issues in the Great Lakes watershed, and this is where things get a little touchy, dealing with the water crossing. Okay, now that's a hypertext link term for the scientific stuff. As it relates to the CBP, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the Northern Border PEIS. Okay, now this is critical stuff, that as far as the rocket science okay, as far as that shared data, as far as the metadata, the inner database architecture, that there are some opportunities here. And this was brought out having to do with the interrelationship between the hydroelectric generation and the St. Lawrence Seaway, okay, in no uncertain terms. Okay, that the, as far as what went on with the IJC, with up on the St. Lawrence, as far as the impact on the, okay, they had, you know, these authorities, they're unelected, they, you don't admit liability, but they admitted liability for causing the erosion of all the beaches on Lake Ontario. That these are complicated issues, and this is to have some technology as far as the watersheds, you know, federal regulations, state regulations, counties, you know, health departments, you know, so that it's coherent and common sense. Okay, that, and as far as the project that I've been working on, the binational Niagara, the watershed, the Seaway Greenway, okay, that there are, I mean, you know, they call it the Niagara River. For crying out loud, it's not a river, it's a strait, okay, or it's a channel. I mean, now, as far as the lexicology, that the things that we're doing there, that they should be coherent with what's going on here in Detroit. Okay, as far as the Detroit River, I asked half a dozen people how long it was, and they didn't have the faintest idea. Someone said it was, well, the captain of the boat said it was about 30 miles. The Niagara River is like 35 or 36. And
I'm going to need you to wrap it up, Thomas.
yeah, I want to wrap it up.
There's a line growing behind you. Okay, there's one person, but
there's a line.
it's 3 minutes. I made you look.
So, thank you very much for this opportunity.
But Thomas, if there's time later, I mean, we can definitely have you come back. But I do want to just address a couple of the key points that you made, because I think you made some good points. And we definitely welcome, I mean, we do think that public education and creative engagement, making sure we get more folks engaged in these issues is critical. I was very heartened to hear that, at least in the state side, the BWET program, which engages water education, has come to the Great Lakes region in the school program, which is very exciting. We do a lot of work with the university systems in the Great Lakes research, which I think that's part of that capacity priority that we want to address there. And I think it seems like you'd be very interested in the ongoing work that's happening with the Lake Ontario St. Lawrence River water level study that works very closely with your priorities.
Now, the idea here, the intelligence, okay, the State Department stuff was to extend and expand that model to the 50-year relicensing settlement of the Niagara Power Project. Okay, and that the time frame here should be that 50-year period, because the intention was to mitigate the cumulative negative impact of those operations from 1957 through 2007, and that the business model should go from 2007 through 2057 in no uncertain terms. And that, you know, in terms of the framework, but the important, that as far as the time frame, but the other thing that's very, very important is that the IJC, that they get into the comment period, which is October 31st, in their website, www.northernborderpeis.com. Okay, that they're, as far as the water crossing, that we want to create something that's user-friendly as far as the binational economic tourism, so that there are going to be ferry boats that are historically, they used to do this 200 years ago. They've shut it off. Really, in 1809, they didn't want trade between the U.S. and Canada. That's why the United States Congress passed the Non-Intercourse Act. It was illegal. Now,
What is he talking about?
Okay.
so that, you know, so as far as that, there's an opportunity here as far as for visualization to show what this place looked like in 1812. That the technology is here, and that there's an opportunity to get the public excited about energy conservation and those sorts of things.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thomas.
Honor and privilege.
Yes.
My name is Sarah Rang. I work with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. We're a binational group of 80 mayors representing about 14 million people. So first of all, congratulations. I'm glad to see some priorities and some energy at IJC. It's very welcome. In terms of some of the feedback on some of the issues that you asked for, we're very supportive in terms of developing a very small set of core indicators that are easily communicated, especially at the political level. It's tremendously important and currently lacking. I would also echo some earlier comments from Eric and others in the importance of green infrastructure. Stormwater is a huge challenge at the city level, growing challenge, basement flooding. It's expensive, it's getting worse. It is a huge challenge that we need to find a way to address through green infrastructure and other kind of mechanisms. But I would suggest that we find a way through the IJC priorities to actually focus on some of the green infrastructure progress and stormwater in particular. The other comment I'd make is an overarching one in terms of reaching out to municipalities. They have many.
And you have been watching our live coverage of the International Joint Commission talking about what their priorities are going to be for the next 2 years. This was their biennial meeting here in Detroit. They are wrapping things up today, and they're going to be going forward and setting their agenda for the next 2 years.